Throughout human history, every generation is giving a new set of tools.
The world is making things in new ways.
With big data, we will be able to make detailed maps of the universe.
The idea of creative computing is for machines and humans to work together.
We used to use intuition, and now we use analytics.
Social technology made us not just a bunch of ships, but one fleet.
Big data generates that possibility
to create a far more efficient system in terms of power generation.
And we give music creation for the masses.
We had 12 million data points and growing from the zoo.
That's what we need to do in genomics.
Teachers just need to teach.
IBM Watson can help doctors.
Discoveries,
recipes,
insights,
better products. Once you know,
You can't unknow.
It's a good day to make something new.
Good afternoon. All right, I know you all just had a full lunch, so we're going to try that again. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, we're going to try to keep the energy level rolling, and we had a fantastic morning. Hopefully you enjoyed your lunch. I know that those of us from the East Coast were out there soaking up every ray of warmth we could before we hibernate for the next 6 months. Let me just recap this morning quickly. Jeremy Gouchier, our outside innovation thought leader, led with, "Your innovations are closer than you think." Danny Saba, our general manager and cloud CTO, talked about the importance of building an open cloud with brokerage, integration, and portability, all for business outcomes. We're going to pick up there this afternoon, where we will continue to explore how IBM, our partners, and each of you continue to push the edges of innovation. We'll be joined by 3 members of the IBM senior leadership team. Senior Vice President of Marketing, John Iwata, will talk about how cloud is impacting the line of business executive. Senior Vice President Mike Roden will talk about Watson and its impact and launch on the cloud. And finally, Senior Vice President Bruna DeLeo of the Growth Markets will host a fireside chat with James Clark, the Director of Global Infrastructure at Univar. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Iwata to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As we just heard, my perspective here on cloud is going to be not as a CMO of IBM Marketing Cloud to all of you and to our clients everywhere. It's going to be my experience and my learnings as somebody who needs cloud in order to transform a marketing organization. And the premise here, so it's not just about IBM as a broader premise, as I've compared notes with CMOs in multiple industries around the world here, there's one thing, well, there are many things we agree on, but here's one. Whether we have called ourselves B2C or B2B, those distinctions are no longer adequate or accurate in describing what many, many of us see, and that is whether you want to call it B2P or B2I, all of us are having to understand and engage individuals. It's true for healthcare systems, it's true for government agencies, it's true for, quote, B2B companies like IBM. And it's not that IBM is going to become a, quote, consumer company, having exited some of our businesses that were, quote, consumer businesses. We are fully focused on the enterprise. But because of the internet, because of mobile, because of all of this that we recognize today as, quote, consumers, or rather individuals, be they business people or patients or students or citizens, they're going to breed the expectations of consumer digital engagement to their interactions with all of us. They don't care if we're healthcare, government, or industrial. That's their expectation. You're familiar with statistics like this. Some of them are quite amazing when you really think about the fact that 4 out of 5 adults will admit to having a smartphone at arm's reach 22 of 24 hours a day. It's probably higher than that, but we don't want to get all creepy about the other time. If you think about, though, what they're using these devices for, of course, it's not about technology, it's about their behavior, it's about the decision-making process. How does anybody find out about something? How has anyone's perception or opinion changed today? And then how they act upon the decisions that they make. This phenomenon is not limited to, quote, consumer companies. Now, just to illustrate that, in a traditional B2B environment, the decision-making is an ecosystem, different people, different functions and departments. So this is oversimplified, but I think you'll find it close enough. Traditional B2B decision-making. This is a person who says, my company, my employees need something. That's one person who says, we have a need. A different person or team says, what are all of the available options to fill that need? And they go out there and evaluate the options. A different person or department then says, well, having settled upon that option, let's negotiate. If it's a technology tool or solution that's been identified, negotiated, procured, it then has to be installed, and that's handed to another group of people to deploy. And finally, we, the users, are the recipients of all of those decisions, and we get to work. It's close enough. Now, in this little ecosystem of decision-making, who is the least influential and inconsequential constituent in that whole decision-making process? Unfortunately, it's the user. I mean, at IBM, nobody asked me what the light bulb should be or what the carpet should be, or a lot of decisions that are made by others and then provided to us as employees of the company to do work. But that world is giving way. It won't be replaced, but it's giving way to a new phenomenon. This is the user, this is the practitioner, this is the professional who wants to get something done. She identifies the need. She goes out there and starts to look at choices. She evaluates options. She knows that people who have firsthand experience with the decision they've made carry much weight, far more credible than any formal communications from the provider of that tool or product or service. She now has the mechanism and the means to evaluate and have access to the opinions of an uncountable number of people who have that firsthand experience. By the way, if people out there who wish to identify this need, they are sophisticated in not waiting for her to come knocking on their, quote, homepage. They are intercepting all of those digital signals that she's putting out, either implicitly or explicitly, and they begin to nurture her. She doesn't want to just make that commitment without trying, and increasingly people are able to try the product or service directly. She then can say, I like it, I'm going to, quote, procure it armed with a credit card, and I'm going to install and deploy it myself, also known as a download or as a service. If she likes all the promise of the product and the post-sale support to make her proficient at the use of that product or service, well, then she's happy to advocate for it, and the cycle continues because she influences many. It is always the case that the few influence the many, but these days, today, because of the internet, the many influence many more. This is changing marketing and communications, corporate affairs, public relations, public affairs, the work of trying to reach an individual and compelling them to act. Our work is not promotion, it isn't messaging, it isn't all of those things. It is, in the end, how do we get now from population-sized segments and demographics to that aspiration of understanding and engaging an individual. In our case, it is nothing in terms of some consumer brands which have to reach millions, tens of millions, or more. So in the end, and this is a chart I use with my marketing organization at IBM, all of that comes down, in my view, to these three imperatives. Their expectation as decision makers, as practitioners, as users and buyers, the individual, is that you know me. You know everything that you need to know to be relevant to me, whether it's content, whether it's the product, whether it's the offer, whether it's the channel, whether it's the time of day, whether where I am in the journey. We often talk about path to purchase. We talk at IBM about path to proficiency. You know me, and I expect you to know me. I may allow you to know me in return for that value. Well, what does that mean? In practical application, it means data. So all the talk about big data and analytics, my perspective in the marketing realm is the data yields the ability to personalize, customize, and be relevant to finer and finer grain segmentations one day to a segment of one. Data is the only way we can get there. The second one is really important, and this is where cloud begins to be an imperative. If I think about the expectation of the person, I won't say consumer in my case, but the practitioner, the buyer, the user, the expectation is one of great responsiveness in every dimension. They expect the experience to be personalized and always improved. They expect the product and service to be improved. They expect something that didn't work so well yesterday to be improved and fixed, very, very quickly. They bring that expectation of responsiveness, which is not the same as personalization, to the experience, not just the sales experience, but the total customer experience. And the only way we can get there is through being agile. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. It's been a great education for me. And the third thing, which I won't spend a lot of time on, and it's not a throwaway, is that the brand is the experience. Often we focus on the transaction, the transactive capability of digital channels or digital engagement. Yes, but I think given the brands that are represented here at our event, you would say, well, my brand stands for much more than what I have to sell you. And so it is with IBM, and we have a lot of work to do to make the transactive capability digitally smooth, seamless, personalized, responsive, elegant. Long way to go, but it still wouldn't be the totality of what we believe the IBM brand promise represents. That's for another day, but I want to drill down on this responsiveness equals agile. So if you come back to statistics like this gets to how do I have my team perform at a level where the people we wish to serve are experiencing wonderful responsiveness like this. What is required here? For the marketing team to be understanding the experience, what's not working, what the expectations are, and how do we get into this kind of new operational mode? Well, a few years ago, some members of my team, I would say of a different generation, started talking about we need to be agile, we need to be agile. And I said, we do have to be agile. We also have to be fast and streamlined and quick and innovative. And they go, no, we need to be agile like capital A. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And I began to understand what they meant. And I had to adopt some new vocabulary here. So I went and bought Agile for Dummies, literally. And I learned a lot of things about Agile from the world of development, software development, how that world is changing. And some of the terminology that the more modern marketers were using, they had borrowed from software, which had in turn borrowed it from rugby. Now, I don't understand rugby. I like football, American football. But the one statistic that I remember from the side-by-side comparison here, and there's a lot of differences between football and rugby, is in football, the ball is actually moving 18% of the time. The clock's running, but the ball's actually moving 18% of the time. There is a lot of start-stop in American football. And if you add in penalties, and I'm a 49er fan, so you got to add in a lot of penalties, self-inflicted penalties, unforgivable penalties. Okay. The game is actually a lot of like stop, start. You can call a timeout and so forth. 18% of the time the ball's in motion. In rugby, it's 44% of the time. They call a timeout when there's a severe injury. You could debate what severe is. But they're moving. They're moving. It's fluid. The same team plays offense and defense and so forth. And there's a lot of differences. My point here is, why is it that they borrowed the terminology of rugby to describe a new way to develop software? And I was beginning to get it. And the big thing here is, and you got a room full of technical leaders and developers, so I'm beyond my competence. I'm just telling you what I learned. What I learned is if you release code or improvements a few times a year, it's impossible for you to be responsive on the terms of the consumer, the customer, the practitioner, the user, or the buyer. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to get the capability that we need in marketing from our technology colleagues if we were only improving things a couple of times a year. Because those are big bets on the new capability or the improvements. You've got to be right, and it takes time, and you deploy, and so forth. But as I've learned, Agile to me means speed, responsiveness, iteration, and improvement. And so what we've done at IBM marketing is we started off as an experiment. Just back up for a second. This photograph here is an example, is a picture of a piece of a lab that we started building out a few years ago as an experiment. I partnered with our CIO at the time and said, why don't we do this? Let's take a floor in one of our buildings in New York, get it. Let's put in a marketing lab, 2 of us. And you'll put your IT folks in these scrum teams together with the marketers, and we'll insist that the agencies, the creative agencies, also co-locate with us. And we will insist that everybody who's in this lab must be trained and certified on Agile. And let's see if the work improves. And it's been a wonderful experiment, and it's been so successful, we're now scaling this out globally, these digital marketing labs or marketing innovation labs together with CIO. And it's because of the outcomes. So here are just 3 quick ones here. And the main thing here is the delta in outcomes. So in this one case, and they're converting these learnings into APIs now. APIs being exposed to all other marketing teams around the world. We have to do digital commerce, digital marketing in 170 countries. I cannot put a lab, nor would you ever want to, in every country. But what we can do is have a small network of these labs, try out, prototype, refine methods and tools and approaches, refine them, convert them into APIs, and make those APIs available to all of the marketing teams globally, and that's the track we're on right now. So this one, which is basically retargeting, the improvement 10x, another one here on response scoring for inside sales and lead development representatives. Huge, huge improvements in the ability to know who you are dealing with even before they identify themselves. Increase that personalization, therefore the relevance of that chat or that phone call. And we just deployed one for cross-sell and upsell where the team looked at, you see here, 3 years of data about what tended to be sold with other things, pretty simple, but we had never reduced that to math. Even if you could, how could the teams get at it? Now it's a callable digital service, and the results are remarkable. These are 3 APIs or digital marketing services that are 3 of several to come. We're on this track. This is a good investment. It is, I believe, a very good way for us to get to the expectations of not the consumer in IBM's case, but of the digitally empowered buyer and practitioner. The last example I want to share with you, just so that you see the power of this used almost in any kind of digital engagement, because we are talking about systems of engagement. We do want to engage our clients and prospects, but in every one of our cases, don't we also want to engage our employees? If I think about the crude segmentation models that we have used in marketing historically, 18 to 24-year-olds, household income, zip code, job title, gender. As crude as those have been, they're pretty sophisticated compared to the segmentation models we use inside of most of our companies. We have employees and we have managers and we have executives. We have sellers and we have technical people. And if it's good for, it's good for everybody. So all of the information, all of the tools, all of the training for all managers must be the same. It's good for all of them. But we have the capability, this machine, this muscle, to then say, go back to those 3 points I offered to you. Personalization, well, what if we could be personalized in our engagement with our workforce based on their needs? Path to purchase, path to proficiency. Wouldn't we say that all of our employees, managers, technical people, sellers need to be on a path to proficiency too? Where are they on that journey? What content, coaching, confidence, skill, tool can we put in front of them based on their channel, based on their time of day, based on their usage to improve their effectiveness and engagement? We could. So one example here is a little over a year ago, July of last year. The backstory here is not important. Jenny says, Jenny Rometty, our CEO, says, we're in the middle of this huge transformation. We're moving to these new kinds of capabilities. We need to reach new kinds of decision makers. And a big gap in our company is the skill and knowledge level of the entire workforce. And on topics like cloud and big data analytics and Watson and security and all these other topics, how can we upskill the knowledge, skills, and ultimately the confidence of 430,000 people? So we had talked about a MOOC, these online universities. And she says, that's a great idea. This is July of last year, whatever year it was. And I said, great, so let's build this online university for all IBMers to be upskilled and to get this knowledge. And I said, let's aim for January 2014. She goes, this is July. I know. How about September, right after Labor Day of this year? It's July, September. And she says, we're going to start a new ritual on IBM. We're going to call them Think Fridays. Every first Friday of a month, everyone will have a Think Friday, and we're going to enter into this new online university, which we call Think Academy. We're going to put a new course, new assets. Secondly, I want it to be mobile first, mobile device first, and I want you to apply data analytics so that you get to personalize one-on-one learning. And I want it done by the first Friday of September of last year. Well, thank goodness we had this lab in place, and we took a team and said, I know your mission to do marketing outside the firewall, but we're going to ask you to do the same engine. Don't be confused. You're just going to aim this capability at your colleagues in the company to build this online university, build in the data and analytics and a recommendation engine tied to a dynamic content library, which we will enrich every month with a new quote course. And we are going to be on this regimen. And I know the first one is going to be really awful, and my colleagues in the room will not argue with me that it was pretty awful. But Jenny said, it's okay. I'll tell them that in the first Think Friday, and we'll get better. We'll get better because it will be agile. And by gum, I really didn't agree with this, by the way. Biggest learning for me is it works. And the employees accepted the fact that it wasn't perfect, but it got better and better and better. And had she listened to me, we would not be able to say here we've had 13 months or 14 months, 12 or 13 topics, and 350,000 individuals using it. The average time is 48 minutes of each course, and we're switching on more and more personalization based on analytics and beginning to deliver to the individuals now recommendations on content assets based on what we believe is how they learn. So same muscle, same team, I'm convinced. Now, in the end, what does this have to do with cloud? Cloud is the deployment platform. I mean, I think of agile as the method. I've absconded this term. Now I say we're moving to agile marketing, and I mean it capital A, as I've learned. We're going to aim it at any constituent we wish to engage on their terms, which is increasingly personalization and responsiveness. And let's scale this thing out. And cloud, we rely heavily on our colleagues with Bluemix and SoftLayer and our SaaS portfolio, because I'm a big client, I'm a big consumer of our own portfolio, is the only way we can deploy this capability, build and test and deploy this capability to be as responsive as our clients and users expect. Hope that was helpful to you. It's been a journey for me and a great learning and rather exciting.